Hey everybody, welcome back in. Today we're going to talk about soldering your components for your electric guitar. This could be a very overwhelming process. The first time I did it on my first electric guitar probably took me over an hour. Now I can do it in about 10-15 minutes. How'd I get there? Practice. Alright? So do not expect to be perfect the first time. This process of soldering is where I coined the phrase, put on your patience pants. What does that mean? I gave you a minute to think about it there. That means you need to take deep breaths and just relax when you are doing this. You cannot be in a rush. You cannot be agitated. You can't be fidgety. If you are, you got to stand up, take some deep breaths, do some stretching, take a walk for a minute, come back. All right? You cannot be in a bad state of mind when you're about to solder, because soldering your components is extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating. And if I'm in the wrong mindset to begin with, I'm going to get that much closer to being angry before I even know it. So take some deep breaths. Relax. Enjoy the process. Because this is how your guitar is going to make sound or not make sound. So this can be extremely frustrating. It can also be very easy to mess up. So you got to take your time. You got to relax. No Metallica, no AC/DC on the radio, maybe a little Goo Goo Dolls, something like that. Still upbeat, but kind of relaxed. All right? When you go to do this, you can do it several ways. Our preferred method is with our little Pembridge guitar trays. These work out really nice for how things can fit in, and it holds everything for you. You can use these. This is from Harbor Freight, little crabby alligator guy. It comes with a magnifying glass. I take that off because it just gets in the way. All right. As we do this video, we're going to do step by step. We're going to show some pictures, some close-ups. All right. Take your time. Step by step. If you mess up a step, don't try and finagle it. Go back, redo the step. Make sure every step looks how it does in my example and in the picture, and you should be fine. All right? Let's go. Before we install our parts into our tray, or if you're using some other method to hold them, what I want you to do is take a little bit of abrasive paper and scuff the back of these two variable resistors that we often call potentiometers or pots. There might be a little bit of a film or oil on those, which could prevent good solder. So just take a little bit of paper and scuff them up. Then go ahead and install all your parts into your tray. The next thing we're then going to do is coat the back of our two potentiometers with solder. So we are going to put a little puddle on the back of them. This is a really nice step to do first to help you get acquainted with your soldering iron and how it works and how it heats up. Once you've coated the back of those two potentiometers, the next thing you're going to do is fill in the leads coming off of them with solder. So if you look at yours right now, they almost look like they have a hole in the middle, which they do. The wire's going to go through there. We want to close that hole with some solder. So coat the back, and then 3 leads. Make sure they do not get soldered together though. 3 leads, and then the 2 leads over here on the jack. So if we look at the 1 lead on the jack, you can see how it does not have solder on it yet. So let's go ahead and put solder on it. Our 2 leads on our output jack. Now we have 3 leads in the middle of our switch and a little ear out here. This is going to end up being for a ground later. This is called a 3-way selector switch. That's why there's 3 leads on it. You can see as I do this, you don't need a whole lot of solder. And I just kind of, almost like I'm painting it. And that should be enough to cover up those leads. Oh, my one down here isn't quite covered. Partially covered, that's okay. So we'll put our iron on there, heat that up a little bit. Here in step 2, let's review. We did a puddle on the back of these, coated the 3 leads, coated the 3 leads, 2 leads here on my jack, 4 total leads on my switch, 3 in the middle, and then the one out here. So that is step number 2. Make sure you get comfortable how we did this. Take your time in doing it. As we start step 3, now is time to start working with wire. Typically we use a 20 gauge AWG wire. The first thing we're going to do is do our grounding wires. So whichever color you want to use for your ground, I'm going to be using a black with a red stripe. I don't care what color you use, just keep it consistent for these next couple steps. So here in step 3, we are going to take what's going to be our volume knob and we are going to ground it to itself. So the first thing we're going to do is take about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of wire and we're going to strip both ends. You can see on this one I stripped the one end. No more than that is needed. If you get sloppy with how much you strip off your wires, you could cause yourself issues down the road with things shorting out or grounding out where they're not supposed to. So now I need to strip the other end and then we'll talk about how we do this. All right, here's my other end. In my wire strippers, the very top notch is for a 20, and I'm gonna have no more than that much sticking out. It's even hard to tell because it's almost flush with the top of the pliers. I'm just gonna squeeze, I'm gonna twist this a little bit and then pull. And if you're using the correct hole, try and get on camera here, there we go. We should be good. And now here is my wire. This wire is stranded, so what I'm going to do is twist it, meaning it's not one solid piece inside there. If you twist stranded wire, it's easier to work with. All right, here's my volume knob. I have my wire prepped. Now what I'm going to do is whichever end has less wire sticking out of it, that's the one I'm going to put in the lead. So if you remember our leads, we covered them with solder already. That's going to make life really easy. Have my heat on the back of it, and you can see that the solder is starting to get melted. And now just push that through. Wait for the solder to cool down. You can blow on it if you want. And then we do what's called the tug test. If you tug on it and it doesn't come loose, you have a good solder joint. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to ground it right to the back where I had that puddle before. Again, this makes life easy that there's already solder there. Just going to take a little bit. And I'm going to hold it there, not super long because I don't want to meld it, until I get my needle nose that I can just hold it. And now I'm just going to, again, almost like I'm painting, and cover the top of that wire with solder. Wait for it to cool. And again, give it a tug, and I'm in good shape. Step 4, we are taking a 5-inch long piece of our same color wire, and we're going to go from the back of our volume, just like we did in the previous step, soldering it to itself. But now we're going to come around to our switch to that lead that's on the side. All right, so as we look at our real one, we're going to go from here to that lead, which is on, just happens to be on this side because of how I put it into my tray. Step 5, I'm going to take a 3-inch long piece from the back of volume to the back of tone. From here to here. When you are doing this, a little tip. Number 1, the longer I hold the heat on there, the greater chance the other 2 wires that I've soldered are going to soften and come up. And then also make sure that the rest of your iron doesn't hit the coating of your existing wires and melt it. That would be bad. In our next step, this is where one of these crabby guys comes in handy. It's going to hold my fuse in place. If you have another method, that's fine. I'm going to take a 5 to 6 inch long piece of wire, and both ends are stripped. And if you notice, I stripped about a 1/4 inch off them. I've already twisted the ends, and what I'm going to do is just take that wire and wrap it around one end of my fuse. And then I'm going to take the other one and do the same thing. Now I'm going to solder that. So yes, right now I am making a loop on the fuse. You can give it your tug test after it cools down. Ooh, that's still toasty. That's, by the way, a technical term we use when we're soldering, toasty. I'm going to take the middle of that loop I just made, and I'm going to cut it. And now I'm going to strip those 2 ends. Here in this step, we're going to take that wire with the fuse in it that we just made, one end to the back of our tone and one end to our output jack. It's important to make sure which end of your output jack you are going to. We are going to go to the one where the lead is attached to this ring. That's a really easy way to tell. Once you've completed that, we are now done with our ground wire for now. So in this example, I was using black. Remember, you can use whatever color you want. We did a tug test at all of them and they all look good. If you wanted to, you could go back. If you have a place like this, where you're not really pretty and you have some wires, I can come back and coat that with more solder as well.